From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
It's harvest time for a sweet summer treat. We head to Georgia to check out this year's watermelon crop. President Trump announces his running mate.
If they get in, you're going to see tariffs, period.
We have more on this senator from the Eastern Corn Belt and what he can mean for agriculture. Northwestern Corn Belt, it faces waterlogged fields.
That yield loss, it's certainly going to impact, especially as we get in towards tasseling.
What has farmers in that area most concerned? Right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Corn and soybean conditions continue to remain steady in some of our key growing areas. That's according to the latest crop progress report issued by USDA on Monday. Now, right now, 68% of the corn crop is rated good to excellent, the same as last week. For soybeans, it's the same story, 68% good to excellent, also on par with a week ago.
Compared to last year, much better looking corn crop overall. At this point, mid-July of 2023, 57% good to excellent, 13% very poor to poor. If you want to see big problems with the corn, go to the Southeast or the Mid-Atlantic. North Carolina coming in this week, 73% of the corn rated very poor to poor.
However, in states that have been inundated with rain and flooding like Iowa, South Dakota, and Minnesota, crop ratings continue to fall for both corn and soybeans last week. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me. Michelle, will this impact yield potential in those areas?
Farmers here in the Northwestern Corn Belt have already lost hundreds of thousands of acres of cropland due to flooding, but they're also at risk for yield loss in those waterlogged areas. It comes in a couple of forms, one increased disease risk, but also fertility issues such as nitrogen deficiency. Yellow corn and uneven stands are common symptoms of nitrogen loss in fields that have had heavy rains or flooding. Agronomists say in extreme cases, 2 to 4% of the nitrogen can be lost in a couple of ways.
Firstly, that leaching that you talked about, where the nitrate slowly moves down through the soil profile, especially when you get those rains that sit for a while and they just keep pushing that nitrogen down through the soil profile, even getting it below the root zone. That's when the roots can't reach the nitrogen and we start seeing that deficiency. The other part is denitrification.
That's when nitrogen is converted to gas escaping into the atmosphere. This can cut corn yields. The amount is dependent on how much fertilizer was applied initially.
That yield loss, it's certainly going to impact, especially as we get in towards tasseling, because right now at tasseling, that's when we're getting the most nitrogen uptake. We take up 50% of all the nitrogen at tasseling and beyond. All that goes into the grain.
He says farmers can scout fields to determine if a fertilizer application is warranted or economical, but there's still time before tasseling. And it can be applied with fungicide, as those fields likely face the threat of increased disease. In fact, some areas are already seeing pressure.
Risk is elevated. We know that in kind of the Northwest area, as in particular, you look at Iowa, you see some gray leaf spot risk potential. We already know that we have southern rust on the borders of the state of Illinois, over in Missouri and other locations, which is kind of an early start. And we already have tar spot when it comes to corn.
Corn is most susceptible right around pollination, and he says yield loss can be substantial depending on the disease.
You know, in the case of tar spot, we're talking about, a few dozen bushels at least that sometimes people have seen in the worst case scenarios. We know we've talked about 60 bushel hits in some cases from some of those other diseases that we mentioned. We can see some 20, 30 bushel hits.
Wet soybeans are also susceptible to diseases, and Montgomery says even with lower crop prices, he recommends using foliar fungicides to preserve yield because farmers will need to bushel up this year. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. And more flooding concerns, this time for producers in southern Illinois. The Washington County Emergency Management Agency warning that a secondary dam has failed in Nashville, Illinois. It posted this map on Facebook saying the dam has been overtopped with floodwaters, warning people failure of the Nashville Dam was imminent and to evacuate. Now, the National Weather Service said 5 to 7 inches of rain fell over an 8-hour period. An 11-mile stretch of Interstate 64 in the Nashville area was closed due to flooding. Elsewhere, the problem is not enough rain, which is causing wildfires to grow. Right now, crews in Oregon are battling several wildfires across the state, including the Larch Creek, Lone Rock, Cow Valley, and Falls fires. Now, the Falls fire is burning 20 miles northeast of Riley, Oregon. Crews say hot, dry, and windy conditions caused the fire to grow rapidly over the weekend. It has now grown to more than 64,000 acres and is 0% contained. Meanwhile, the rain chances persist for the central part of the country. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht joins us with an update.
Temperature outlook overall reinforcing that cool air coming in and across the United States. Now remember, this is summer cooler air. If it was December, January, February, we'd be talking about quite the cold air outbreak. But this is going to bring temperatures back to and just below average. At least confidence is high that we're going to be below average into Oklahoma and Texas. You can see the chances of below average temperatures between July 21st and the 25th are going to be highest in those locations, but also the possibility is there through Missouri, Indiana, even a little bit up into Iowa and Minnesota. Different story, and see how close we are between below average or below normal temps and above normal temperatures. Back out towards the west, significant signals pointing to above average highs, or at least confidence is very high of above average highs between the 21st and the 25th for those locations. And of course, Florida in the southeast, you got the potential for above normal temps as well. And here's a look at how the corn crop is doing for our neighbors to the north. Ontario, Canada, sharing this picture. That is going to be the half-summer grains in Ontario earlier this month, saying that despite the challenging spring they've seen, they've had some corn that was knee-high by the 1st of July. Again, that's going to be the half-summer grains in Ontario. I'll have more in your forecast in just a little bit.
Happening right now, the Republican National Convention is going on in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and former President Trump announced his running mate will be from the Eastern Corn Belt. Mr. Trump making the announcement on social media that he had selected Ohio Senator J.D. Vance to join him on the Republican ticket. The former president's statement said, in part, that after considering the talents of others, he decided the best person to serve as vice president is Senator Vance. Mr. Trump saying Vance served in the Marine Corps, graduated from Ohio State University, and is a Yale Law School graduate. Vance is also the best-selling author of Hillbilly Elegy, which later was turned into a film. The former president cited Vance's successful business career and said the senator will focus on helping American workers and farmers in the Midwest and beyond. The 39-year-old Vance is from Middletown, Ohio, but where does J.D. Vance stand when it comes to agriculture? He's only been in the Senate since January of 2023. When it comes to policy, he's a nationalist raised in the Rust Belt. He believes in bringing more manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. Farm Journal Washington correspondent Jim Wiesmeyer calls Vance a new wave populist of the Republican Party, but says that when it comes to trade, he's more aligned with Bob Lighthizer, who was the previous U.S. trade representative under President Trump.
Definitely, he is a tariff. He's for the tariffs. That's his America First tag. And so I see him in sync with President Trump. And there's some concern there on the part of the ag sector of what that would mean on retaliation. Also what it would mean to China. I quoted a UBS report this morning saying it would be a significant drawback for China's gross domestic product. So, but they're not going to flinch. Trump and Lighthizer and now J.D. Vance, if they get in, you're going to see tariffs, period.
Wiesmeyer points out Vance received the Friend of Agriculture Award from Ohio Farm Bureau, and he says that means Vance is aligned with many of Farm Bureau's principles and priorities. Both corn and soybeans try to bounce back on Tuesday, but is it a new trend or just another bump on the way back down? We'll have details on that next. And later, Georgia farmers are fighting the elements to bring in this season's watermelon crop. We're off to the peach state in the country. It was another turnaround Tuesday for corn and soybeans. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us again with more on what fueled the bounce back in markets now.
Tuesday's market closes were mostly higher, except for the wheat market. Mike Miner with Professional Ag Marketing is providing analysis this morning. So, Mike, it felt like kind of a risk-on day on Tuesday. Did that come from outside markets, and what prompted it?
Yeah, yesterday was a really nice higher day for the grain markets and most of the livestock markets. So we had a little bit of a derecho event on the overnight on Monday night that kind of fueled some into Tuesday. Market didn't seem to care a whole lot about it, but honestly, at this point, slightly oversold conditions could have helped out some of the buying. But honestly, at this point, I think it was a broad market buying event for most of these ag commodities. And I think it's put together a pretty nice little rally for that day. But we'll see with follow through. That's what is really going to be worth watching going forward, I think, rather than just a one-day event, Michelle.
Well, and we're so oversold, Mike. Soybeans hit new contract lows before making that bounce. And so there's probably a little bargain hunting. But even if you get some corrective buying, how long can it be sustained?
It's going to be difficult. When you look at the weather conditions, condition scores are still really high. We've got a larger part of the Corn Belt still fairly decent on moisture. The Eastern Corn Belt continues to get rainfall in a timely manner. The corn left on farmers' hands is still substantial, so that's going to help really limit any market short covering events. So it's going to be difficult to sustain a rally going forward unless we have some massive change in fundamentals in the balance sheet for this corn or soybean market, really. And at this point, a few of these dead cat bounces and things like that, I think, but to sustain a rally is going to be difficult for these grain markets.
So is that why we seemingly have the funds kind of ignoring some of these weather events like the derecho that you just talked about?
When you look at the drought map, the traders think rain makes grain. And at this point, we're going to need a larger event, more broad across the Midwest to really get funds to switch on us from these record net short positions in corn and soybeans.
Yeah, they are hefty shorts, that's for sure. All right, thanks for joining us, Mike Miner with Professional Ag Marketing. We'll have more AgDay coming up. Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
So a little bit ago, we looked at the above average, below average temperature map. Now we take the same time period and look at the precipitation rainfall chances between the 21st and the 25th, or at least I say the confidence is high that we're going to see wetter than normal conditions back into Texas, also a little bit into Oklahoma. Remember, that's the same area where confidence is high that we're going to be hotter than normal. Put those two together, that could spell a recipe for some heavier downpours, perhaps even some severe weather between the 21st and the 25th. At least the early ingredients are starting to come together for that. A different story, we're talking about not only the heat back into the Dakotas, but also Montana, but the dry heat, drier than normal conditions back in the Dakotas, but also into Montana. Then we start to spread things out. It's not all that high in terms of the confidence, so wetter being wetter than normal, but it is going to be around. It's looking like a bit of a wet pattern, not necessarily an active one where we'd be monitoring severe system after severe system. So here's Wednesday at 7 o'clock in the morning. So we advance through the morning hours, start to see that low pressure system, that trough, continuing to move to the north, with some rain associated with it. That is a cold front, a very weak cold front that is going to try to make it into the southeast. But in terms of the cooler than average temperatures, that's going to settle back out here to the west, or right behind me, into next week. So again, there's Thursday night, and into Friday. You got things starting to dry out and also calm down. Big old circle here, which is going to be a ridge of high pressure developing, and that heat extending back up into parts of Montana as well as the Dakotas. The jet stream looks something like this. So a pocket of cool air kind of hanging out over portions of the Midwest and the Northeast through our Thursday and Friday before that ridge really starts to take hold into the weekend. Aberdeen, South Dakota, thunderstorms high around 85 degrees. Fairview, Tennessee, got some morning showers, high about 78, low of 65. Sterling City, Texas, that's over there by Midland, Odessa area in San Angelo, high around 95 degrees.
A big move could be on the way for the largest pork producer in the U.S., Smithfield Foods. The parent company plans to take it public. Chinese company WH Group wants to list Smithfield Foods U.S. and Mexico operations either on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ. Smithfield was acquired by WH Group back in 2013 for $4.7 billion and then delisted from the New York Stock Exchange. Now, according to reports, WH Group aims to secure a minimum of $1 billion in funds through its initial public offering. The announcement was made in a filing with the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, where WH Group is currently listed. Smithfield Foods, which is headquartered in Smithfield, Virginia, processes approximately 30 million hogs annually, owning several pork brands, including Nathan's Famous. The plan would still need regulatory approval. What do a key part of the game of badminton and pork prices have in common? Well, a lot, apparently, in China. A report on Yahoo News saying the cost of shuttlecocks used in the game of badminton are up by 40% in the country, and experts say cheaper pork prices are to blame for the increase. Now, shuttlecocks are often made using feathers or plastic, and one Singapore-based company says the price of goose and duck feathers used to make those higher-end shuttlecocks are the ones seeing an increase. The founder of a badminton training facility in the country saying that if pork prices increase, more butchers and farms will set an annual production goal depending on the price of poultry, but with a lower price point, pork has higher consumer demand, and that means fewer farms are willing to raise ducks and geese for those feathers, which is happening right now. Now, one player of the game saying prices have climbed so high for shuttlecocks that he can't afford to play anymore. Georgia is known for its peaches, pecans, and onions, but right now it's sweet watermelon harvest season. We'll see how it's going for growers next in the country. A sweet summer treat will soon be coming to your table. As John Holcomb of the Georgia Farm Monitor tells us, one farm battled the elements and rising costs to deliver sweet summer watermelons just in time for the season.
Nothing says summertime quite like a big, juicy, sweet watermelon. Thankfully, Georgia has plenty of producers that grow them, pack them, and get them into stores for people to enjoy during the summer months. One operation that's busy doing just that is Bloodworth Farms, as they're right in the middle of harvesting, something they're no doubt excited to see after having to plant later than expected and having to endure a challenging growing season.
It was really wet in the early spring. We were struggling to get field work done. We hold a lot of water here. Our dirt's kind of heavy, so it made tillage and things like that very difficult. We were very crunched. We were down to the date. We had a set date of planting somewhere around March the 20th, but the rain didn't stop. We got them planted. The rain kept coming, and we battled disease. We couldn't, you can see these fields right here. We were just having a conversation. They look beautiful compared to what they did a month ago because the disease and from the rain was just hard.
Thankfully, the harvest season is going much better. As Bloodworth says, the rains have slacked off, which allows them to get in and out of their fields with ease. However, Bloodworth says another challenge this year has been his overall cost of production continuing to rise, which in the end gets passed along to the consumer and can end up creating issues with demand.
I did not realize how far over my initial budget I was, and just didn't really take into consideration the cost of the machinery, the cost of our repairs, the daily inputs. It might not be a big increase, but at the end, when every single one of them has increased a little bit, the bottom line is it has greatly increased over the production that we've had in the past, 3 or 4 years. And it's going to be a continuing problem because this cost is going to have to trickle down to the consumer. And where's that fine line where that consumer is going to say, hey, I can't afford to buy this. This is a luxury item. This isn't a staple.
Despite those challenges this season, though, Bloodworth says the crop has turned out to be worth the headache, as demand for watermelons has remained steady.
So far, the demand has been good. The price fluctuated dramatically between the Florida market to the Georgia market. And to be honest with you, I was really expecting the prices to be borderline, hey, is it even going to be worth picking? But they've been decent. We've had a lot better, but to be honest with you, we've been very fortunate.
Reporting in Rochelle for the Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
Our thanks to John Holcomb and the Georgia Farm Monitor for sharing that story with us. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.